Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Hello and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with me, your host, Rosie DeCandia. Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining me again. And I hope you're enjoying these little fairy tales by the Grimm brothers. I have to say, I'm enjoying them myself. So without any further ado, I'll stop babbling because you know I like to babble. Let's get back to Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales by the Brothers Grimm. On this episode, we're reading The Girl Without Hands. A certain miller had little by little fallen into poverty and had nothing left but his mill and a large apple tree behind it. Once when he had gone into the forest to fetch wood, an old man stepped up to him whom he had never seen before and said, "Why do you plague yourself with cutting wood? I will make you rich if you will promise me what is standing behind your mill." "What can that be but my apple tree?" thought the miller, and said, "Yes," and gave a written promise to the stranger. He, however, laughed mockingly and said, when 3 years, 3, not 2, Rosie, when 3 years have passed, I will come and carry away what belongs to me. And then he went. When the miller got home, his wife came to meet him and said, "Tell me, miller, from where comes this sudden wealth into our house? All at once, every box and chest was filled. No one brought it in, and I know not how it happened." He answered, "It comes from a stranger who met me in the forest and promised me great treasure. I, in turn, have promised him what stands behind the mill. We can very well give him the big apple tree for it." "Ah, husband," said the terrified wife, "that must have been the devil. He did not mean the apple tree, but our daughter, who was standing behind the mill sweeping the yard. You see, you don't get free lunches. You never get a free lunch. So if someone comes around asking for shit, don't be promising shit. You don't know." The miller's daughter was a beautiful, God-fearing girl and lived through the 3 years in piety and without sin. When therefore the time was over and the day came when the evil one was to fetch her, she washed herself clean and made a circle round herself with chalk. The devil appeared quite early, but he could not come near her. Angrily he said to the miller, "Take all water away from her, that she may no longer be able to wash herself, for otherwise I have no power over her." The miller was afraid and did so. Remember how the witch in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz gets she melts with water, so the devil also can't have anything that's clean in water. Did you get that? Oh wow, I just noticed that. The next morning, the devil came again, but she had wept on her hands, and they were quite clean. Again he could not get near her, and furiously said to the miller, "Cut her hands off, or else I cannot get the better of her." The miller was shocked and answered, "How could I cut off my own child's hands?" Then the evil one threatened him and said, "If you do not, you are mine, and I will take you yourself." Uh-oh. The father became alarmed and promised to obey him. So he went to the girl and said, "My child, if I do not cut off both your hands, the devil will carry me away, and in my terror I have promised to do it. Help me in my need and forgive me the harm I do you." I'm shocked. He's actually not going to go with the devil when he made this promise, and he's going to cut off his daughter's hands. Okay. Consider me speechless, and you know I'm never speechless. But Daddy is a douche. That's all I'm going to say. She replied, "Dear father, do with me what you will. I am your child." Thereupon, she laid down both her hands and let them be cut off. The devil came for the 3rd time, but she had wept so long and so much on the stumps that after all they were quite clean. Then he had to give in and had lost all right over her. Oh my God. So now she got no hands and the devil doesn't get her anyway. Well, and that's good. The miller said to her, "Because of you I have received such great wealth that I will keep you most delicately as long as you live." But she replied, "Here I cannot stay. I will go forth Compassionate people will give me as much as I require. She's like, fuck you, Daddy. You cut my hands off because you didn't have balls enough to go with the devil when you made this ridiculous thing. So you know what? You don't even deserve me as a daughter. Good for the daughter. Good for the daughter. That's not what she's saying, but that's what I'm saying in subtext because it's the Jersey girl in me, and that's just how it's going to be. I don't care. That's just how it's going to be. Thereupon, she had her maimed arms bound to her back, and by sunrise, she set out on her way and walked the whole day until night fell. Then she came to a royal garden, and by the shimmering of the moon, she saw the trees covered with beautiful fruits, that grew in it, but she could not enter, for there was much water round about it. And as she had walked the whole day and not eaten one mouthful, and hunger tormented her, she thought, I love it, hunger tormented her. She thought, if I were but inside, then I might eat the fruit, else I must die of hunger. Then she knelt down, called on God the Lord, and prayed. And suddenly an angel came towards her, who made a dam in the water so that the moat became dry and she could walk through it. Okay, talk about a miracle. It's a miracle, a true blue miracle, a miracle come true. Woo! Barry Manilow. Oh my God, I'm a fan of the Manilow. That's all I'm going to say. I love Barry Manilow. Oh God, I do. Okay, so where were we? And now she went into the garden, and the angel went with her. Okay. She saw a tree covered with beautiful pears, but they were all counted. Then she went to them, and to still her hunger, ate one with her mouth from the tree, but no more. You see, she wasn't a greedy bitch. She just ate the one to satiate herself, and she was done. Okay? You see how kind she is? Remember they said she lived in piety and she wasn't a sinner. That's all I'm saying. The gardener was watching, but as the angel was standing by, he was afraid and thought that the maiden was a spirit and was silent. Neither did he dare to cry out or to speak to the spirit. When she had eaten the pear, she was satisfied and went and concealed herself among the bushes. The king, to whom the garden belonged, came down to it the next morning and counted. You believe this? He's counting his fruit, and saw that one of the pears was missing, and asked the gardener what had become of it, as it was not lying beneath the tree, but was gone. You see, when you have so much, it's like having money. The king is like a miser. He's counting and counting and counting. Isn't that terrible? He's counting this fruit. Why? Why you gotta count the fruit? That's all I'm gonna say. Then answered the gardener, last night a spirit came in who had no hands and ate off one of the pears with its mouth. The king said, how did the spirit get over the water, and where did it go after it had eaten the pear? Valid questions. Valid questions. The gardener answered, someone from heaven came in a snow-white garment and made a dam and kept the water, that the spirit might walk through the moat. And as it must have been an angel, I was afraid and asked no questions and did not cry out. When the spirit had eaten the pear, it went back again. The king said, if it is as you say, I will watch with you tonight. When it grew dark, the king came into the garden and brought a priest with him, who was to speak to the spirit. All three seated themselves beneath the tree and watched. At midnight, the maiden came creeping out of the thicket, went to the tree, and again ate one pear off of it with her mouth, and beside her stood the angel in white garments. Then the priest went out to them and said, come you from heaven or from earth? Are you a spirit or a human being? She replied, I am no spirit, but an unhappy mortal deserted by all but God. The king said, though you are forsaken by all the world, I will not forsake you. Oh, maybe he's not so greedy. I like this. He took her with him into his royal palace, and as she was so beautiful and good, he loved her with all his heart, had silver hands made for her, and took her for his wife. Okay, I take it back. He was counting the fruit, maybe because he wasn't a miser, but look it. He had to count the fruit because he had to meet her. It was all destiny. La forza del destino, the force of destiny. The force of destiny. I like it. Okay. After a year, the king had to go to war, so he placed his young queen in the care of his mother and said, if she is brought to bed, take care of her, nurse her well, and tell me of it at once in a letter. Then she gave birth to a fine boy, so the old mother made haste to write and announce the joyful news to him. But the messenger rested by a brook on the way, and as he was fatigued by the great distance, he fell asleep. Of course he did. He was tired. Okay. Then came the devil, who was always seeking to injure the good queen, yeah, because he felt burned, remember, and exchanged the letter for another, in which was written that the queen had brought a monster into the world. When the king read the letter, he was shocked and much troubled, but he wrote an answer that they were to take great care of the queen and nurse her well until his arrival. The messenger went back with the letter, but rested at the same place and again fell asleep. Here we go again, and we know what's going to happen. Then came the devil once more, and put a different letter in his pocket, in which it was written that they were to put the queen and her child to death. The old mother was terribly shocked when she received the letter and could not believe it. She wrote back again to the king, but received no other answer, because each time the devil substituted a false letter. And in the last letter, it was also written that she was to preserve the queen's tongue and eyes as a token that she had obeyed him. This shit is dark. This really is not for children. But the old mother wept to think such innocent blood was to be shed, and had a doe brought by night and cut out her tongue and eyes and kept them. Then said she to the queen, I cannot have you killed as the king commands, but here you may stay no longer. Go forth into the wide world with your child, and never come here again. The poor woman tied her child on her back and went away with eyes full of tears. Poor woman. She's already had it bad enough that her father has sold her down the river and cut her hands off. Now she's got to have this child, and now all this because of the devil. You see, when the devil gets in the way, and now she's got to leave home with this child and fend for themselves. Exactly. My sentiments, exactly. But at least the mother-in-law, they didn't paint her as a bitch. You know what I'm saying? She loved her, she took care of her, and all that other good stuff. Okay. She came into a great wild forest. And then she fell on her knees and prayed to God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to her and led her to a little house, on which was the sign with the words, Here all dwell free. A snow-white maiden came out of the little house and said, Welcome, Lady Queen, and led her inside. Then they unbound the little boy from her back and held him to her breast that he might feed, and laid him in a beautifully made little bed. You see, the power of prayer. Miracles, miracles. If you believe, you will receive. Then said the poor woman, How do you know that I was a queen? The white maiden answered, I am an angel sent by God to watch over you and your child. The queen stayed 7 years in the little house and was well cared for. And by God's grace, because of her piety, her hands, which had been cut off, grew once more. Damn! You see, she has faith, and she keeps the faith. She didn't turn her back on whatever her faith that she believed in, even when her hands were cut off and all this was going on. She still had faith. At last, the king came home again from the war, and his first wish was to see his wife and the child. Then his aged mother began to weep and said, You wicked man, why did you write to me that I was to take those 2 innocent lives? And she showed him the 2 letters which the evil one had forged, and then continued, I did as you bade me. And she showed the tokens, the tongue and eyes. Then the king began to weep for his poor wife and his little son so much more bitterly than she was doing, that the aged mother had compassion on him and said, Be at peace. She still lives. I secretly had a doe killed and took these tokens from it, but I bound the child to your wife's back and bade her to go forth into the wide world and made her promise never to come back here again because you were so angry with her. I have a question. He now knows he did not write those letters. So why would he just tell his mother, I didn't write those letters? Bitch, I did not write any of that. I love that woman. And I would just be like, there's a mix-up here and blasey blazoo, because the mother still thinks like he wrote those letters. And I'd be like, let's clarify this. I did not. But anyway, I digress. I would find out from the messenger. I'd be like, where's that friggin' messenger? Where's that messenger? But it's been a long time. Time has passed, right? Okay. Then spoke the king, I will go as far as the sky is blue, and will neither eat nor drink until I have found again my dear wife and my child, if in the meantime they have not been killed or died of hunger. Thereupon the king traveled about for 7 long years. You see a pattern here. She's in the house for 7. He's traveling for 7 long years, and sought her in every cleft of the rocks and in every cave. But he did not find her, and thought she had died of want. During the whole of this time he neither ate nor drank, but God supported him. At length he came into a great forest, and found therein the little house whose sign was, Ha ha! Here here all dwell free. Then forth came the white maiden, took him by the hand, led him in, and said, Welcome, Lord King, and asked him from where he came. He answered, I have traveled about for the space of 7 years, and I seek my wife and her child, but cannot find them. The angel offered him meat and drink, but he did not take anything, and only wished to rest a little. Then he lay down asleep and put a handkerchief over his face. Thereupon the angel went into the chamber where the queen sat with her son, whom she usually called Sorrowful, and said to her, Go out with your child. Your husband has come. Who names a child Sorrowful? Granted, your situation has sucked, but you named the kid Sorrowful? I mean, come on. So she went to the place where he lay, and the handkerchief fell from his face. Then said she, Sorrowful, pick up your father's handkerchief and cover his face again. The child picked it up and put it over his face again. The king in his sleep heard what passed, and had pleasure in letting the handkerchief fall once more. But the child grew impatient and said, Dear mother, how can I cover my father's face when I have no father in this world? I have learned to say the prayer, Our Father, which art in heaven. You have told me that my father was in heaven and was the good God, and how can I recognize a wild man like this? He is not my father. What an impetuous little child. Kind of smart, though. Smart, right? He was 7 years old. 7 years have passed. When the king heard that, he got up and asked who they were. Then said she, I am your wife, and that is your son Sorrowful. Kind of spicy caliente. Sorrowful, he should be called precocious. And he saw her living hands and said, My wife had silver hands. She answered, The good God has caused my natural hands to grow again. And the angel went into the inner room and brought the silver hands and showed them to her. Then he knew for certainty that it was his dear wife and his dear child, and he kissed them and was glad and said, A heavy stone has fallen from off my heart. Then the angel of God gave him one meal with her, and after they went home to the king's aged mother. That's what the angel gets. That's the things. I'll give you a meal and peace out, bitch. There were great rejoicings everywhere, and the king and the queen were married again and lived contentedly to their happy end. The end. We do love happy endings, and once again, people getting their just desserts. Okay, I know some people right now might be like, I'm not religious, the whole God thing, and if you are religious, there's nothing against that either. So this is more about having faith. For me, this story is all about keeping the faith. Yes, I'm keeping the faith. Yeah, keeping the faith. It's an old song by Billy Joel. First, I want to talk about the fact that the father was full of betrayal. He made this bargain with the devil. Whether he knew it was the devil or not, doesn't make a difference. And then he had to give the devil the child. But then when it came down to it, where it was either his child's life or his own, he decided to give up the child's hands. And he did that, even though he was so torn up about it. So for me, I kind of feel like it's also of being of your word. You made the deal with the devil. You now realize what it's all about. And instead of him saying, hello, I'm going to take responsibility. So for me, this story is a mixture of responsibility, taking accountability, and having some faith. Because there's a couple of things going on. I'm sure there's more going on. There's so many layers to these fairy tales. But he did not take responsibility and accountability. He should have just said, you know what, devil, screw it. I don't want you to take my daughter. I made the deal with you. And now I know who you are and what you wanted, and you are trickery. I'm going to give you me. And because he did not take responsibility and he was a big old douche, he didn't live up to his word and promise. So for me, I think, it's important to reinforce the value of keeping your word and also taking accountability. We've talked about this in other books. When you're in a situation and maybe you've had a conversation or perhaps an argument of some sort, of a disagreement with somebody, sometimes we're also quick to, and not all of us, to point the finger that it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. But I'm just going to encourage you to think about when there have been times in your life there was an argument, and perhaps you also, because it does take two to tango, if you took responsibility and accountability for your part in the argument or the situation or whatever it was that went awry. And I think it's very important for all of us to be very conscious of the fact that when things happen, sometimes they're not, they're not on us, and that's fine too. But when you have to take accountability, like I think being responsible and taking accountability shows maturity, as well as being conscious to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Or like, just like yourself, I think I said words in a heated moment and I don't mean them. And I think it's also a time where this could be a time where you can mend bridges with people. Maybe you've had arguments in the past and maybe they weren't the person that was in the wrong and perhaps you were. Now, this isn't to guilt and shame you. Whenever I bring this up, it's just to help you become conscious and to think about a situation. And then if the onus is not on you, then the onus is not on you, and that's fine. But I think it's first important to always take responsibility for something that we have said, we say we're going to do, and then we don't fulfill it, or when it was the situation that we have been a party to and that we don't own up to it. That's really on us. So I just want to encourage us to think about that, and just when a time hits you, that maybe it does suck to say to somebody, I was wrong, but I'll tell you something. That person respects it a lot more, and you'll respect yourself a lot more, and they respect you, and you really earn. I mean, I gotta be honest. It's not great, but afterwards you feel like, you know what? I admitted my weakness in this. I admitted that it was my fault, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you apologize, you move forward, and the person can trust you again. Because think about the times people haven't owned up to you and how you walk away and you said, I can't believe it. This person I never thought would do this, did this. And at least if they took responsibility and accountability for it, I'd have more respect for them. So you know what? Whether you have done it or had it done to you, I always like to say, do unto others as you will have done unto you, right? That's an old biblical saying. The same thing with being responsible for things, holding up your word, because you don't like when someone doesn't hold up their word to you. So, that is just a reminder on that. And then secondly, it's about keeping the faith. Keeping the faith in yourself. Keeping the faith in your journey. The young lady had no hands. And she said, I can no longer live here. And for me, I think she was basically so disheartened by what her father did. She's like, but I know I'm going to be well cared for. She said that. So she bound her hands behind her back and she took off, right? And she was well cared for. And you're going to say, well, there's no angels. But let me tell you something, my friends. This is all metaphors. Angels, people appear as your guardian angel. You don't know it. And you do know it. Because after they walk away and something wonderful has happened, you're like, wait a second. That person just helped me and I can't believe that. Was that like a guardian angel? You are being sent all the times little opportunities to see as miracles, as blessings, as angels being on your shoulder. And when we don't recognize it, it's harder for us to notate it. And it's harder for us to receive that more often. So I'm just going to encourage you to think about the times people, situations, things have cropped up where you kind of were at the last of your tether, but you still had a little bit of hope, a little bit of faith, and someone swooped right in, or something swooped right in, an opportunity came right in and saved you from whatever was going down. And that's what this story is about. As you see, the queen's faith, right? The young girl, and then she gets into the hands because of her faith. She gets in an even better situation. The king falls in love with her. He sees her and falls in love with her, takes care of her. Okay, fantastic. She gets rewarded for having faith and for staying the course and being honest, because when she went to the pear tree, my friends, a partridge in a pear tree, when she went to the pear tree, my friends, she didn't bite a bunch of pears. She took what she needed, and that was it. And that was it. And she was protected because she was honest. She was honest. So she then gets an even greater reward. And then she lives with the beautiful king, and then he has to go off to war. And then all of a sudden, that whole mishigas with the devil and the letters, and she walks out again, right? And then she goes on her knees and prays. And that's just you saying to spirit, to whomever, even yourself, oh my God, I'm down at the end. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then suddenly the angel comes to her. Your angel could be a new job, a friend, a family member. You just won the lottery. I don't know. But the point is, this is what the story is about, keeping the faith, even when it feels the darkest, just like we're in right now. And I really think these are so timely, because I am doing this during a virus. When I decided to do this, I did not think, no one ever knew this was going to be happening, right? And I think like I said last time, these stories are drawing to me. Children's stories really give you hope and faith and teach great lessons. And right now is a great time to reinforce these lessons. So keeping the faith, even at your darkest hour, knowing that you are provided for, even though you don't think you are. And notating, even when the little crumb comes to you. Because once you start noticing that, what happens, bigger things come to you, because then you start seeing miracles left and right. People say it all the time. I was down to $1 in my checking account. I literally took I had $1 in my wallet and played the lotto, and they won. Okay, so it's about keeping the faith. The fire's burning bright. Also with the king, he came home to see his wife and child and the whole story. And then he's like, I'm going out, but I'm not eating and drinking. So he made this vow, right? And it was more about like, because of my faith, I'm going to find them. And if they're dead, then, so be it. But he went for 7 years without eating and drinking. And he was just sustained because he had his faith. It's like athletes, or it's like someone who gets like, oh my God, people that are stranded somewhere for days and they're like, I don't know what kept me going, but something kept me going. I just knew I had to live. I had to get through. That's called faith, my friends. It's that little piece of you that, is survival of the fittest. So the king just survived on what he's like, I'm going to find my wife and child. And when he came to his last thing, he was going to drop. Who presents himself? The angel goes in the house and suddenly he gets offered a meal and drink. I love this. He still says no because he's thinking after 7 years, they're probably dead, right? But he still says no, and he's like, all I want to do is take a nap. And look what gets presented. He wakes up, and through his faith, they're all put together again. They go back to his mother, and they live happily ever after. Now, point is this. How much faith do you have? Faith in yourself? Faith in your abilities? Faith that things are going to work out for you? Faith in the situation? That is something you can control. And I'm not talking about whether you're religious or spiritual. You don't have to be. It's just knowing that I have the goods. I'm strong enough for this. I will overcome this. We look through history. My friends. How many people have overcome some huge freaking ordeals? Yeah, I know we're going through COVID. Happened 100 years ago with the Spanish flu, right? They got through it. So right now, no matter what you're facing besides the COVID in your life, you will get through it. But it's up to you to hold on to that little bit of faith. Even if it's all darkness around you, if you look hard enough, you're going to see a sliver of light. And then that sliver, once you focus on that light, what happens is that sliver becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So your perspective right here, right now, I want to encourage you to think about what you can focus on right now that's going right in your life. What can you focus on right here, right now that's going right in your life? Focus on that each and every day. Focus and be grateful and thankful for it. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get more to be grateful for. And things are going to work out in the way that they should work out because you also trust. Trust in the situation. Sometimes, you know what? When we are at a loss for words or what we can do, we know we have no control, but there's nothing else. We've exhausted every possibility. The best thing to do is throw your hands up in the air and say, I surrender. That's a very mature and conscious thing to do because it's in the surrendering that is when the miracles happen, because you no longer are trying to navigate and control a situation the way you think it's supposed to happen. You now realize, I've done all I can do. I trust that it will work out. I surrender, and so be it. And then what happens? The miracle comes in. Your guardian angel flies in and takes care of what it needs to do. Now, you're saying to me, well, that doesn't happen in the next moment. It doesn't. We're all waiting on miracles, but the thing is this. It's who are you becoming while you're waiting for that shit to happen. That's right. You're building your character. You're learning what faith is about, and you're also understanding what it's like to go through tumultuous times, because we did not sign up to have a rosy unicorns and rainbows and beautiful lollipop world. We signed up to experience this journey of life, and there are ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. So sometimes we're flying high and sometimes we're not, but it's in the flying, but like when we're underneath, that we know that it's going to rise again, like a roller coaster, right? You know, after you're at the top, and then all of a sudden you whoop down, you're like, oh shit, I'm down here, but I know it's going to come back up again. It's the same thing. You know what? That's the same thing with your life. You can't always be at the bottom of the barrel, but it's in the bottom of the barrel that you grow and you learn the lessons, and you take with it, you take the knowledge that you have, and that's going to help you lift higher and higher and higher and take you back up. Because at the end of the day, it's all about becoming your best self. Because you are enough and you're worthy, and you should be your best self all the times. So just think of life as a roller coaster and flow with it. Be in the flow of it, and just know whatever you're going through, this too shall pass. I love that biblical saying too. I didn't really get it as a kid. I didn't get any of these fucking sayings as a kid. But the older you get, you think about it. This too shall pass. I do like to say this too shall pass. I said it before, like stank ass gas. And a friend of mine said, yeah, this too shall pass like a kidney stone. Those are very, very painful. It's not easy, but you know what? You got the stamina, you got the faith, you got the strength. You can do it. We all can do it. So let's all be collectively into this together. Let's support one another on the journey, support ourselves, support one another, and know that we shall get through this and become a better person because of it. All right, my friends. I hope you are having a blessed day, and I'm sending you so much light and love and peace and joy and bliss. And remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and you are loved. And you know what? I'm definitely overwhelmed by spirit. Someone is thinking of you right now. They're thinking of you with love and light, and they want you to know that. So I'm just sharing that with you. This is not upset tears. It's just sometimes I channel because I'm an empath. So they want you to know that they're thinking of you and they love you, and maybe they can't get to the phone to tell you, or maybe that's not who they are. But you know what? They are thinking of you and they love you. All right, my friends, wishing you the best. And until we read again.